Eddard Stark rose earlier than usual that morning, long before the pale light of dawn touched the spires of the Red Keep. Sleep had been uneasy these past weeks, haunted by the responsibilities he had shouldered since becoming the Hand of the King. The restless nights also came from the suspicions gnawing at him. Suspicions about the parentage of Prince Joffrey Baratheon. Suspicions that threatened to tear the realm apart if even half of them proved true. King's Landing was already stirring when he left his bedchamber. The servants padded softly through corridors, carrying steaming kettles and linens, doing their best to appear invisible to the lords and ladies still abed. At times Ned felt more akin to them than to the perfumed and polished courtiers. He too walked quietly enough that he seemed a ghost in this city of stone. Ever since his arrival, he had felt like a northerner in a lion's den. He was the second man to reach the small courtyard near the Tower of the Hand. Waiting for him there was Ser Rodrik Castle, white whiskers twitching in the morning air. Rodrik had just returned from a quiet inquiry in the city, at Ned's behest, to gather information. He had slipped in and out of taverns, spoken in whispers to stable boys, and put an ear to the ground for every rumor that slithered through King's Landing. When Ned saw the set of Rodrik's mouth, he knew the morning would bring no comfort. "Any luck?" Ned asked, his voice gruff. There was no point in pleasantries. Not these days. Ser Rodrik shook his head. Some talk of the Lannisters, some talk of the Gold Cloaks. Whispers that the Queen is meeting with men in secret. No mention of a single shred of evidence about the parentage, that is. Ned nodded, pursing his lips. "We'll keep at it. The truth never stays buried for long." He laid a hand on the old knight's shoulder. "Rest now, Ser Rodrik. You've earned it." Ser Rodrik dipped his head in acknowledgement and left. Ned watched him depart, uncertain how much rest any of them would find. Word had come from Pycelle about the king's plans for a boar hunt soon. Robert Baratheon was in no shape for a hard ride through the Kingswood, but no one could convince him otherwise. Ned's only hope was that Robert would return none the worse for wear. He paced along the courtyard's edge, pausing now and again to let the morning's hush settle around him. His mind flicked over every snippet of conversation, every sidelong glance he had caught in the corridors. He recalled the heavy ledger from the Master of Coin's accounts, how it listed the golden-haired progeny of House Baratheon stretching back generations. Yet never once did that line produce a fair-haired child. And here was Joffrey, all bright gold, as though poured from the same mold as Jaime Lannister. The notion churned his stomach. But to name a queen's child a bastard was treason of the highest order. To accuse the queen of infidelity with her own brother was beyond the realm of madness. Or so it seemed. He turned his steps toward the library, thinking that perhaps further genealogical records might yield clues. The library's wooden door creaked quietly as he opened it. Inside, under the soft light of a few lamps, a solitary figure was bent over a tome nearly as large as he was. Tyrion Lannister looked up, arching one thin eyebrow in wry amusement. "My Lord Stark," the dwarf said, pushing himself upright. "You do rise early for a Hand of the King." Ned paused, momentarily surprised. He and Tyrion had not often crossed paths in the library. "Lannister," he greeted coolly. "I see I'm not the only one who finds the city's nights restless." Tyrion offered a thin smile. "We live in a place where secrets multiply faster than fleas. We both know that knowledge is power, or so Peter Baelish would have us believe. You come to read about something in particular, my lord?" Ned considered him. Tyrion was, by all accounts, cunning and clever. Like all Lannisters, he had connections, though Tyrion's position was precarious due to his dwarf stature and the scorn it earned him from his father, Lord Tywin. Could Ned trust him? The thought seemed madness, given the long-standing tensions between their families. And yet Tyrion was nothing if not a man who could see truths behind illusions. Might he be a resource in uncovering what Ned suspected? He decided on caution first. "I'm seeking more about certain bloodlines," Ned said. Tyrion's stare was frank. "Ah, yes. House Baratheon's lineage, if I'm not mistaken. You wouldn't be the first to note how Robert's ancestors produced Hairblack as knight for 100 generations only to have golden-haired children now." Ned stiffened. "What do you know of that?" A sardonic grin touched Tyrion's lips. "I know rumor and speculation. I also know that you're not the sort of man to go chasing rumors lightly. Which leads me to wonder, do you believe there is substance to the talk that Joffrey is not entirely a Baratheon? Before Ned could stop himself, he spoke, voice low. You speak dangerously, Lannister. I speak plainly, Tyrion said. He closed the book with a gentle thud. If you're looking to uncover the truth of Joffrey's parentage, you are either a braver man than most or an utter fool. Some might say they're one and the same, but I admire a man who wants the truth, especially if that truth might prevent the realm from plunging into chaos. Ned narrowed his eyes. Why would you, a Lannister, even think of risking your house's reputation? Tyrion leaned forward on his elbows. Because war is not good for business, or for dwarfs, or for anyone who prefers a bit of wit and wine to corpses in the gutters. War is the last thing the realm needs. If a rumor like this catches fire, if someone finds proof, it will ignite conflict that could drown the 7 kingdoms in blood. You Stark men are honorable, but that doesn't always stop the tide once blood feud is unleashed. Ned took a slow breath. The man had a point. The realm indeed teetered on a knife's edge. Suppose I do seek to prevent that. What part would you play in it? A small shrug. If the rumors are true, Joffrey's claim to the throne is built on a lie. My sister, the queen, is no fool. She'll do what she must to protect her children. And Jaime, my dear brother, he might do the same. I have my suspicions about them. His eyes flickered with something like sorrow or resignation. I'd prefer a realm that doesn't crumble under the weight of scandal. The question is, how do we find a path to the truth that doesn't result in treachery and heads on spikes? Ned studied Tyrion for a long moment. Against his better instincts, he found himself compelled by the dwarf's frankness. At last, he spoke. I have been gathering pieces of this puzzle for some time, but each new fragment weighs more heavily on me. I want to be sure, beyond any doubt, of what I suspect. Only then can I find a way to handle it quietly. And you think I might be of service to you in that quiet handling? Tyrion's expression was unreadable. Ned nodded, a curt, small motion. Yes. You have insight into your sister and brother, you know the ways of King's Landing, and you have access to corners of the city that I cannot reach. Tyrion smiled. Then perhaps we might work together if we can keep our swords sheathed and our heads intact. The wind seemed to shift in that dusty library as if the gods themselves drew a quiet breath at the alliance forming there, Eddard Stark, the honorable Northman, and Tyrion Lannister, the vilified imp of Casterly Rock. It was an unthinkable pairing, a show of trust as precarious as any in the 7 kingdoms. Yet for the realm's sake, they would try. They spoke in hushed tones for the better part of an hour, heads bent over genealogies and ledgers, Tyrion interrupting occasionally with pointed questions, Ned answering in half-truths until he felt more confident that Tyrion truly sought to avoid catastrophe. A plan began to take shape, small steps to confirm certain rumors, quiet messages to certain individuals who might yield information. And above all, secrecy. If Cersei Lannister or Peter Baelish or Varys the Spider caught wind of Ned's alliance with Tyrion, they would likely move to sabotage it before it even bore fruit. Eventually, Tyrion excused himself with a flourish and departed, leaving Ned alone in the library to ponder the ramifications of what they had just begun. For the first time in weeks, Ned allowed himself a glimmer of hope that this might end without swords drawn. But a glimmer was all it was. He left the library and went to the Great Hall, where the day's audiences would begin soon. Robert had decided to leave the minutiae of governance to his hand, so Ned would see petitioners, deal with disputes, and handle the routine tasks of the realm. It was a thankless chore, but as the hours dragged on, Ned managed to keep his mind from turning relentlessly to the matter of Joffrey's parentage. Once or twice, he saw Tyrion in the back, leaning against a pillar, watching the proceedings with dispassionate curiosity. At one point, their gazes met and Tyrion gave him the barest nod. Ned acknowledged it and returned to his duties, mindful not to look too often in the dwarf's direction. Late that night, when the torches in the Red Keep flickered and the day's commotion had receded to a background hum, Ned finally allowed himself to retreat to his rooms. He stood on the balcony, gazing out over King's Landing, the city's lights shimmering. Somewhere out there, plots were swirling, knives were sharpening, and illusions were taking shape. He only prayed that, by forging this unlikely alliance, he might keep the realm from bleeding. In the days that followed, Tyrion proved cunning in the ways Ned had expected. Though his presence in the court was overshadowed by Jaime's martial prowess and Cersei's regal confidence, Tyrion had a network of informants that rivaled even Varys's. Little by little, discreet reports reached Ned, sightings of Jaime slipping into certain corridors late at night, guards overheard remarking on the hush that fell whenever the Kingsguard's Lord Commander passed in or out of the Queen's chambers. More genealogical tidbits gleaned from Pycelle's extensive records of King Robert's lineage. Gossip from distant corners of the capital regarding black-haired bastards fathered by Robert in various brothels and how none of them ever lived in the Red Keep. It was not, by itself, definitive proof. But the puzzle pieces began to slot together with a dreadful clarity. Each day made Ned more convinced that Joffrey was no Baratheon at all, but the product of Cersei and Jaime's incest. If that truth came to light, Robert's fury would be matched only by the chaos that would ensue. One evening, Ned found himself in a small private garden within the Red Keep's walls, an enclave of sculpted hedges and delicate fountains. Twilight was descending, and the sky glowed a subtle purple overhead. He had come here to think, to plan his next move, to decide how best to keep this matter from exploding in the king's face without warning. He heard soft footfalls approach and turned to see Tyrion Lannister entering. As ever, the dwarf's face was watchful. "You chose a charming spot for conspiracies, my Lord Stark," Tyrion commented. "No one ever thinks to search for treason in a garden." Ned exhaled a quiet sigh. "Have you learned anything more?" Tyrion paused near a low stone bench. "Varys's little birds are chirping about renewed tension between the crown and the Iron Throne's finances. That is typical. Peter Baelish is quietly funneling money into some project, though the details remain elusive. But I found something more interesting. A midwife who once served the queen, who mysteriously left her service around the time of Prince Joffrey's birth. She now lives in Flea Bottom, guarded by 3 men in Lannister cloaks. Paid, I suspect, by my father or perhaps by Cersei herself." Ned frowned. "You think she knows something?" Tyrion shrugged. "Or she holds something of value. They wouldn't bother paying her otherwise. However, if she was the one who attended the queen at Joffrey's birth, she might recall some detail that confirms or denies our suspicions. I must speak with her." Ned said it with the quiet conviction that had made him Robert's most trusted friend in their younger days. "That won't be easy," Tyrion replied. "The men guarding her are loyal to House Lannister, but perhaps I can find a way to coax them away, or slip you in. We should do it soon, though. There is no telling when my dear sister might decide that loose ends need cutting." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the trickle of water in the fountain. Ned studied Tyrion in the fading light. "I want you to know," he said slowly, "that I do not take this alliance lightly. House Stark has reasons to mistrust House Lannister." Tyrion let out a quiet, sardonic chuckle. "The feeling is mutual, my lord. But distrust aside, our purpose aligns in this. We both wish to avoid a realm-shattering conflict." Ned offered a faint, grim smile. "Let us hope we succeed." Tyrion bowed his head in acknowledgement. "I'll make the arrangements to approach the midwife. In the meantime, keep your eyes open. The capital is a pit of vipers, after all." He left Ned among the darkening hedges, where for a moment Ned closed his eyes and summoned an image of the north in winter, the wind sweeping over the snows of Winterfell. That memory of home steadied him. The north demanded resilience from its people, and Ned had learned that lesson well. He only hoped it would be enough to see him through this. The next night, Tyrion arranged for Ned to slip into Flea Bottom in secret. It was a place of narrow alleys and stinking gutters, where the poor lived elbow to elbow and survival was an everyday struggle. That they should come here in search of the Queen's secrets was a cruel irony, but one that did not escape Ned's notice. He wore a plain cloak of dark homespun, hood drawn up to hide his face, and carried only a simple sword at his hip. Tyrion, likewise cloaked, guided him through winding streets with surprising familiarity, while 2 sellswords employed by Tyrion kept a respectful distance behind. The air was rank, a mix of offal and sweat, and voices rang out in the gloom, shouts, arguments, a baby's wail, a cat's hiss. King's Landing in all its gritty truth. At length they reached a cramped building with a sagging roof. Light glowed faintly behind shuttered windows. Tyrion motioned to Ned. "Inside is the midwife. My men will handle the Lannisters posted outside the door, distract them or bribe them, whatever is necessary." "Are you ready?" Ned nodded and pulled the hood lower. He followed Tyrion around the back where a single guard leaned against the wall, stifling a yawn. Another guard's footsteps sounded on the front step. Tyrion's sellswords melted from the shadows, and with a few soft words and heavy coin, the guard was persuaded to wander off. Ned's heart hammered. He was not accustomed to deception and bribery, but if that was the price of avoiding open war, so be it. They slipped in through a rear entrance. The back room stank of old straw and rotting produce. Dim lamplight flickered from beyond a doorway. Tyrion pressed a finger to his lips and moved forward with surprising quiet for one so short of stature. Ned's pulse thrummed as he followed, half expecting an ambush of gold-cloaked City Watch or Lannister men. But they entered a tiny living area instead, where a woman, well past middle age, stood at a table sorting herbs. She looked up with a startled gasp, her hand flying to her chest. "Seven save me," she breathed. "Who are you?" Ned removed his hood carefully. "No harm will come to you," he said quietly. "We only want to talk." Her gaze darted to Tyrion, and her face twitched with recognition of the imp fear sparked in her eyes. "My Lord Lannister, I've done nothing, I swear, eh?" Tyrion raised a placating hand. "Peace, woman? We haven't come to accuse you of wrongdoing. We've come to ask about something you may know regarding the birth of Prince Joffrey." She took a step back, nearly knocking over a chair. "I don't want trouble." "You won't have any if you speak the truth," Ned said, voice as gentle as he could manage. "We understand you were the midwife who attended the Queen at the time of Joffrey's birth and that afterward you left the royal service." Her trembling intensified. She looked ready to bolt, but Tyrion blocked the doorway. "Why did you leave?" Ned pressed quietly. "What happened?" She swallowed, her throat bobbing nervously. "I was told to go. The Queen, she gave me coin and said to find a place outside the Red Keep. Said I should be grateful." Tyrion nodded, voice measured. "And were you?" She glanced around the small, dingy room, bitterness flickering over her expression. "I took what I could. But the Queen, she was so insistent. I've never told anyone what I saw. I knew it would cost me my life if I did." Ned felt the tension coil in his stomach. "What did you see?" Her eyes flickered between the two men, fear etched into every line of her face. She hesitated, as if struggling to decide whether to speak. At length, she let out a shaky breath. "When Prince Joffrey was born, there was something odd. The hair. He had a wisp of golden hair. At first I thought, well, the Baratheons are dark-haired, but perhaps the baby took after his mother. That can happen. But the Queen there was so much tension in the room. Ser Jaime was there too, at her side." Ned felt a chill. "Jaime Lannister was there, in the birthing chamber?" The woman nodded, tears threatening. "He was. The king was nowhere to be found. The Queen had refused to allow King Robert in. I'd never seen a father so purposefully shut out from his own child's birth. After the babe came, Ser Jaime took him in his arms, and I remember the Queen whispered something, so soft I could hardly hear. But it was something like, 'Our son, our beautiful son.' And they exchanged this, look, an intimacy you don't see from a brother and sister. I remember thinking it was unnatural." Tyrion's lips twitched, but he gave no outward sign of how that revelation cut him. Ned could only draw a tight breath. "And after the birth?" The woman's voice trembled. "The Queen paid me extra to be silent. She said if word spread about how the babe came so early or about who was in the room, she let me know that silence was best. I was frightened. So I left eventually, and I've been living here since." Ned heard his heart thudding in his ears. This was it, confirmation from someone who was present at Joffrey's very birth. "Have you told anyone?" She shook her head vehemently. "No, never. Some men came by, Lannister men. They keep watch, give me a bit of coin from time to time. Said as long as I keep quiet, I'll be safe. I'm not a fool, my lord. I know what the Queen is capable of. I just want to live out my days in peace." Tyrion stepped closer, voice surprisingly soft. "We understand. You have done the realm a great service by confiding in us. We'll keep your name out of this as best we can. But if you're ever threatened, if you ever need aid, seek out someone loyal to Lord Stark or to me." She nodded gratefully, though tears ran down her cheeks. Ned placed a small pouch of coins on the table before her. "This will help ensure your comfort. Use it to stay safe. And if anyone asks, you've seen no one tonight, understood?" The midwife reached for the pouch with trembling hands, nodding rapidly. "Yes, lord. Thank you." With that, Ned and Tyrion left quietly the way they had come. Outside, the cell's words had indeed persuaded the Lannister guards to wander off, so the escape was unimpeded. They wound through flea bottoms, twisting alleys, tension thick between them as they processed what they had learned. It was confirmation. Joffrey was the product of incest between Cersei and Jaime Lannister. The rightful heir to the Iron Throne should be Robert's trueborn son, or, lacking that, his brother Stannis or Renly. If the king learned the truth in his customary drunk and volatile mood, the realm would erupt in chaos. But if Ned and Tyrion handled this carefully, perhaps they could contain the fallout. The question was how. They parted ways near a crooked street corner, removing the chance of being spotted together. Ned returned alone to the Red Keep, slipping in through a lesser-used gate, while Tyrion disappeared into the swirling gloom. As Ned climbed the dark stairs to his chambers, he wondered if the gods had cursed him. He had never wanted this knowledge. Yet here he was, burdened with it all the same. Over the next few days, Ned met discreetly with Tyrion in the library or in quiet corners of the castle. Their efforts now turned toward the greater challenge, presenting this discovery in a way that would prevent the king from flying into a lethal rage that would tear House Lannister apart, spurring Tywin Lannister to march on King's Landing, and inciting 1,000 outrages across Westeros. Ned dreaded even the thought of it. In the end, they settled upon a bold course of action. Ned would speak with Robert directly, while Tyrion would speak with Jaime. Their aim was to defuse the worst impulses from both sides. If Robert raged, Tyrion would keep Jaime from overreacting. If Jaime became violent, Ned would keep Robert in check. Then, if by some miracle the truth could be told in a controlled environment, perhaps in the presence of a few trusted lords, there might be a chance to negotiate a resolution that wouldn't set the realm ablaze. It was an audacious plan, and neither man believed it would go smoothly. But they had no other recourse. War was the alternative. Ned approached the king on the third afternoon after the midwife's confession. Robert was in the training yard, half-drunk, taking wild swings at a wooden dummy with a warhammer. Sweat poured down his face and his huge chest heaved. Onlookers, some gold cloaks, a few knights, and a handful of curious courtiers watched at a distance, unwilling to be too near the king's dangerous mood. Ned waited until Robert paused to guzzle from a skin of wine, then approached, speaking softly. "Your Grace, a word?" Robert turned, face flushed. "Ned? Hi, come to watch me break a sweat? The boar hunts in 2 days, and I aim to be ready." He sounded more lively than he had in weeks, though his breath was thick with alcohol. Ned steeled himself. "I need your private ear, Robert. It's urgent." The king's expression darkened. He waved a meaty hand at the onlookers. "Out. All of you. Back to your duties, or the gods help me, I'll thrash you all." The watchers scurried away, leaving Ned and Robert alone in the yard. Robert took another swig of wine. "All right, out with it. You look like a cat that swallowed a bird, Ned." Ned's mouth felt dry. "I have discovered something that concerns you, your house, and the succession of the Iron Throne." At once, Robert's brow furrowed, the same stern glare that once lit up battlefields. "The succession? Gods, Ned, I don't want to talk about any of that. I have a son, That is precisely why we must talk," Ned interjected, fighting to keep his voice steady. "It's about Joffrey." Robert's eyes narrowed. "Go on." Ned inhaled. This was the moment. "Robert, I beg you to let me finish before you speak. What I say is based on multiple confirmations, from records, from people in your household, from a midwife who attended the birth. It concerns the parentage of Prince Joffrey." Robert's big hand clenched around the haft of his warhammer. "You're speaking dangerous words, Stark." "I know," Ned said quietly, "but you must hear them. Joffrey is not your son by blood. He is the product of an incestuous relationship between the Queen and her brother Jaime." For an instant, Robert seemed not to understand. Then his face went scarlet, his eyes bulged in shock and fury, and he took a lunging step toward Ned, warhammer raised. "What did you say?" Ned forced himself to stand firm, heart pounding. "I have proof. Joffrey's hair, his manner, the absence of any Baratheon traits, the midwife's testimony. Your lineage's features run strong in all your other bastards, all with black hair, yet Joffrey is gold. Jaime was present at the birth, not you." Robert let out a roar, stumbling as if he might swing the hammer. Ned sprang back, hand on his sword, but the king staggered to one knee, the weapon dropping from his grasp. A ragged sound escaped him, half sob, half fury. "That vial? That woman? She? Gods, Ned, if this is true, I will kill them both." His massive chest heaved, each breath a ragged growl. Ned moved slowly, placing a hand on Robert's shoulder. "Robert, you must not let your anger drive you to rash action. This truth could plunge the kingdom into war. You must be cunning now." Robert looked up, tears standing in his eyes, though it was rage more than sorrow. "They made me a cuckold. A fool. I should have fathered heirs with the gods, with anyone else. They robbed me of my rightful children, and now everyone in the realm thinks that golden spawn is my blood." "I know," Ned said gravely. "But if you call for her head, Tywin Lannister will raise an army in fury. And the truth itself will destabilize everything. We must think carefully." Robert let out a bitter laugh. "You think I care about Tywin's fury? The realm will side with me. They all have to. Think of the cost," Ned implored. "Thousands will die if war breaks out between you and the Lannisters. I beg you, Robert, for the sake of the realm, listen. I am not alone in this. Tyrion Lannister, of all people, is aware and seeks to avoid bloodshed. He's gone to speak with Jaime now, to keep him from doing anything rash when this news breaks. That startled Robert enough for him to blink. The imp knows? And he's… what, playing peacemaker? Ned nodded. Strange as it sounds, he wishes to avoid war. If you would grant him audience, perhaps we can resolve this without open conflict. At least we can try. Robert struggled to his feet, breathing hard. The warhammer lay in the dirt, forgotten. At last, he said in a hoarse rasp, I want them both, Cersei and Jaime, brought here. I want to see them kneel. I want to hear them confess. And if they refuse… His fists clenched, a trembling mass of muscle. Ned exhaled slowly. We can arrange that if we go about this carefully. But you must promise me not to strike first. Lure them in, hold a closed session of the small council or a private meeting where you can confront them in the presence of trusted witnesses. Let me help you handle this. Trusted witnesses? Robert barked a humorless laugh. There's no one in this city I trust except you, you bastard. Fine, do it your way. But if your way fails and those lions bare their fangs, I will have every one of them flayed if need be. Ned nodded, silently praying that it would not come to that. He led Robert away from the training yard, seeking to calm the king further, to steer him toward a safer course of action. Deep inside, Ned knew this had only begun. The next challenge was containing Jaime Lannister's response. That same day, Tyrion made his way to the White Sword Tower, home to the Kingsguard. He found Jaime Lannister in the practice yard behind it, sparring with a pair of younger knights. Jaime seemed in a lively mood, taunting his opponents with quicksilver footwork. His golden hair shone in the sun, and his white cloak swirled with regal flair. Tyrion watched from the sidelines for a moment, stomach clenched. How to explain any of this to Jaime without prompting violence? When Jaime dismissed the knights, he noticed Tyrion waiting. Little brother, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. Cersei's been searching for you. Some rumor you're hatching mischief with Ned Stark? She's not pleased. The last was said with an arrogant smirk. Tyrion raised an eyebrow. Cersei is rarely pleased by anything I do. May I speak with you privately, Sir Jaime? Jaime peered at him, an edge of curiosity in his gaze. Oh? And if I say no, will you run squeaking to father about it? Tyrion offered a chilly smile. Amusing, but trust me, you want to hear what I have to say. With a theatrical sigh, Jaime led Tyrion into a small antechamber off the yard, closed the door, and leaned casually against the wall. Well, Tyrion hesitated, formulating his approach. Jaime, I suspect you've heard rumors about Joffrey's parentage. Jaime's expression went instantly taut, a dagger suddenly in his gaze. And what of it? Tyrion drew a breath. I know the truth, brother. About you and Cersei. About Joffrey. And now so does Ned Stark. And very likely, by the day's end, so will King Robert. Jaime's knuckles tightened around the hilt of his sword. You dare. I do, Tyrion said sharply, holding Jaime's gaze. Because we stand on a precipice of war. Robert will not suffer this quietly. If you brand him a fool, a cuckold, do you imagine he'll turn the other cheek? Jaime's face twisted with something like fury and fear, so fleeting it was hard to read. Then let him rage. We'll muster father's armies and we'll see who emerges victorious. Tyrion shook his head. Don't be an idiot. Half the realm will rise with Robert. Father's forces are formidable, but the cost in blood will be unimaginable. Is that what you want, for your sister, your children, for the Lannister name? Jaime's eyes flickered, narrowing. My children, he repeated softly. You speak as though they belong to me openly. I am not recognized as their father. No, but they are still yours, or at least Joffrey is. Do you want him cast aside, possibly killed in the chaos of war? Because make no mistake, if Robert's wrath is stoked, Joffrey's life could be forfeit. Jaime's breath came faster. Tyrion saw it, the raw protectiveness that lurked behind his arrogant smirk. What would you have me do? Cooperate, Tyrion said simply. Lay down your sword if it comes to that. We're trying to arrange a controlled confrontation away from the public eye with only a few trusted lords. If you and Cersei come voluntarily, if you offer some sort of penance, some arrangement, maybe we can avoid a full-blown war. Ned Stark believes so, I believe so, and Robert might relent if it spares him the bloodshed. But if you come out with swords drawn, it all ends in carnage. Jaime's lips curled in contempt. Bend the knee, is that what you want? Me, the Kingslayer, bending to Robert's fury. Tyrion spread his hands. Better a bent knee than a severed head. Or a realm drenched in blood. Jaime, you can't fight every king you insult. They stared at each other, tension crackling. Then Jaime let out a slow breath, his shoulders slumping. Cersei will never agree to that. She might, if the alternative is a siege of King's Landing or the destruction of her children, Tyrion said softly. Appeal to her sense of self-preservation. Convince her that a discreet resolution, even one that strips Joffrey of open claim to the throne, might be better than a war that ends with us all dead. Jaime sheathed his sword with a trembling hand, then looked at Tyrion with a mixture of anger and reluctant gratitude. Sometimes I hate you, brother. You remind me of the things I don't want to face. He let out a humorless chuckle. And yet, you might be saving all our lives. Tyrion shrugged. It's what I do best, is it not? Annoy you while accidentally saving your skin. He sobered. Go, speak to Cersei. Tell her the king knows or will know shortly. The confrontation will come. She can either walk into that chamber with some plan of contrition and negotiation, or she can see half of House Lannister destroyed. Jaime nodded slowly. All right, I'll talk to her. But if Robert so much as draws steel on her, I will kill him, consequences be damned. Tyrion inclined his head. Fair warning. Let us hope it doesn't come to that. And so, the stage was set. Word reached Ned that Jaime had gone to see the Queen behind locked doors. Robert confined himself to his chambers, drinking and brooding. Tension hung over the Red Keep like a thundercloud about to burst. The boar hunt was set to commence the next day, but Robert had postponed it. Some said the king was ill, others that he was in a drunken stupor. Only a handful knew the truth. On the appointed day, Ned arranged a closed session in the throne room, a smaller audience than usual with only a few present. Robert sat on the Iron Throne in sullen wrath, Ned stood at his side, Tyrion lingered near a great pillar, and a few hand-picked members of the small council watched anxiously. Peter Baelish, who seemed more curious than concerned, Grand Maester Pycelle, fussing with his chain, and Renly Baratheon, who had come at Ned's urging. Barristan Selmy stood with the king's guard, face grave. At length, the towering doors opened. Jaime Lannister walked in first, face set, white cloak swirling. By his side, Queen Cersei strode regally, back stiff with pride. Joffrey did not accompany them, which was undoubtedly wise. They came to the foot of the Iron Throne and stopped. Robert glowered down at them, eyes bloodshot. So you come, Robert rumbled. Good. Cersei's chin lifted, green eyes flashing. My lord husband, might we know why you have summoned us in secret when all the realm expects you to lead a hunt? Robert gripped the throne's arm, knuckles whitening. Don't toy with me, woman. I know. By the gods, I know about you and your brother. A lesser queen might have cowered, but Cersei Lannister was not easily cowed. Her lips tightened. You speak of vile rumors. Enough. Robert roared. I will have truth from your lips, or by the seven, I'll take your head right here. Jaime tensed, one hand on his sword. Cersei's glare flicked to Ned and Tyrion. So, this is how you repay me, imp? And you, Stark, meddling in affairs you can't begin to understand. Ned intervened quickly, voice calm. Your Grace, we do not stand in judgment here. But the realm stands on a knife's edge. This cannot go on. If Joffrey is not the king's son, it places the entire line of succession in question. Renly Baratheon stepped forward, his handsome face troubled. Cersei, I have always treated you kindly, but if you have made a mockery of my brother and the realm, we cannot simply ignore it. Cersei's eyes flicked from Robert's fury to Jaime's tension. Her face was set in stone, but in the silence she knew there was no easy denial left. Too many facts, too many whispers, and Robert's wrath was scorching. Slowly, she drew herself up. Yes, she said at length, her voice shaking only slightly. Joffrey is Jaime's child. So are Myrcella and Tommen. The confession thundered in the hush. Robert let out a hoarse bellow of rage, half rising from the throne. You wretched, he nearly stumbled, half drunk or half mad with anger. Jaime's sword rasped half out of its scabbard. If you lay a hand on her. Jaime, stop, Tyrion snapped. He moved closer, trying to keep a precarious peace. We came here to talk. Talk? Robert roared. What is there to talk about? She's confessed. They all share in this treason. Ned stepped forward, heart hammering. Your Grace, if you execute the Queen and Ser Jaime, the Lannisters will rise in rebellion. We must find another way. Renly touched Robert's arm cautiously. Brother, you cannot kill them outright. That would plunge the realm into immediate war. Robert glared at them all, sweat beading his brow. Then what do you propose? Shall I let the whore remain my queen, as if nothing happened? Cersei stood rigid, fury twisting her face at his words, but she remained silent for once. Jaime's hand still hovered near his sword, eyes flicking from Robert to Ned to Tyrion as if awaiting a spark that would ignite all. Tyrion cleared his throat. "Your Grace, we have reasoned that Joffrey cannot remain your acknowledged heir. The blood of House Baratheon must sit the throne, your blood. Renly is here, as is Stannis somewhere far from here. You have children out of wedlock, recognized or not. But the realm would best be served by a stable arrangement, one that avoids civil war." Robert snarled, but beneath that anger was a flicker of exhaustion. "A stable arrangement? You speak as if a bastard or my younger brothers can just magically appear on the throne. I can hear Stannis' sanctimonious shrieking from Dragonstone already." Ned cut in. "One step at a time, your Grace. We must first settle the matter of the Queen and Ser Jaime. Perhaps you can confine them to house arrest, keep them under watch while we determine the best course." Cersei bristled. "I will not be confined like some. You will do as the king commands," Robert barked. "You forfeit the right to defy me when you started rutting with your brother." Spittle flew from his mouth, but he did not stand, as if the weight of everything pinned him to the Iron Throne. "Confined, yes? I don't trust you out of my sight." Jaime's jaw tightened, but Tyrion shot him a warning look. This was better than beheading after all. "You must understand, Jaime," Tyrion said quickly, "this is not a permanent state. It's a measure to prevent immediate war. Do not draw your sword." His gaze was intense, pleading. "Please." Jaime exhaled sharply, stepping back from the hilt. Robert's fists clenched. Tension thickened the air. Finally, the king spoke again, voice cold. "Barristan, see them confined to their rooms under guard. I'll decide what to do with them soon enough." Ser Barristan hesitated, looking pained, but bowed. "Your Grace." He gestured for two other Kingsguard to step forward. The two men, reluctant but bound by duty, took up positions beside the Queen and Jaime. Cersei shot Ned and Tyrion a baleful glare. Jaime's face was locked in anger. They allowed themselves to be escorted from the throne room, tension radiating from every step. Robert sagged back, head in his hands. "Gods be good. My children, or who I thought were my children. This city. Ned, what have we done?" Ned approached carefully. "We have taken the first step to avoid war. Now the realm will demand answers, your Grace. We must be prepared to give them, and we must see to the succession." Renly stepped forward, trying to keep his composure. "Brother, I stand ready to serve. If you wish for me to be named heir, we should formalize it before the realm." "But what of Stannis?" Robert let out a mirthless laugh. "Stannis, the next rightful heir, I suppose. He won't be soft about this. He'll want Cersei and Jaime's heads. He'll want the children punished, though the poor little ones didn't ask for this." He shook his head. "Gods, I'm too tired for this." Tyrion cleared his throat. "Your Grace, Lord Stark and I believe that a conciliatory gesture toward the Lannisters is still necessary. If you put Cersei and Jaime on trial for treason and execute them, Tywin Lannister will not sit idle." Robert glared. "So the realm must dance to Tywin's tune, is that it? Damn the man." Ned's voice was calm. "A compromise might be reached. Perhaps if they accept permanent exile or the faith's judgment, Tywin might stand down. But we must move carefully. The realm cannot handle open war. Robert." He closed his eyes. "Fine, I'll think on it. For now, see that the city is kept calm. No word of this scandal is to spread beyond the keep until we decide how to handle it. Do you hear me?" "Yes, your Grace." Ned, Renly, and Tyrion all agreed in unison. The king waved them off with a weary sigh. Tyrion and Ned exchanged a glance, each feeling the magnitude of what they had just done. It was not a resolution, but it was not yet war either. A precarious calm, if it held, might just see them through. Over the following days, rumors began to trickle out, as rumors always do. Whispers claimed the king had discovered an unspeakable betrayal by the Lannisters, that the queen was locked away in her chambers, and that Jaime Lannister was under constant guard. But the gold cloaks kept the peace, and no armies appeared on the horizon, yet. Tyrion spent much of his time running interference, placating those among the Lannister household who were outraged. He penned letters to Tywin Lannister at Casterly Rock, urging patience and caution, though Tywin's reply was short and ominous. He demanded immediate release of his children and threatened dire consequences otherwise. Tyrion tried to contain the flames, but it felt like juggling wildfire. Ned, for his part, oversaw the city watch, ensuring no opportunists attempted to exploit the chaos. Peter Baelish slithered around with puzzling calm, offering smirking advice about money and bribes, while Varys watched from the shadows, claiming all he wanted was peace in the realm. Renly tried to gather support among the nobility, while sending ravens to Stannis. Robert mostly drank and brooded, though Ned managed to keep him from ordering an execution every time he fell into a rage. Eventually, Tyrion managed to arrange a private council with Jaime and Cersei, Robert, Ned, Renly, and Barristan Selmy, no one else. In that council, after much heated argument, they hammered out a tenuous arrangement. Jaime and Cersei would not be executed, but they would relinquish any claims to power. Jaime was to resign from the Kingsguard and accept a form of exile to Casterly Rock, with the implicit understanding that he stay out of court affairs. Cersei, likewise, would be stripped of her title as queen consort and quietly sent to live in seclusion, somewhere the king decided, perhaps in a holdfast near the Westerlands or even in a convent under the faith of the Seven. In exchange, Tywin would stand down, and Robert would not call for the heads of Myrcella and Tommen, who were innocent children in all this. As for Joffrey, he would be publicly acknowledged as not of Baratheon blood, disinherited from the throne, but allowed to keep a courtesy title. If he caused trouble, the king reserved the right to banish him as well. The details were hammered out in a tense, quiet negotiation. Cersei spat venom at every turn, outraged at her fall from grace, but at the end, she saw the alternative was death and war. Jaime simmered with resentment, but his concern for his family and for Tyrion's pleas finally stayed his hand. Robert roared and cursed and declared them all dishonorable wretches, but at last relented for the sake of the realm. Ned and Tyrion stood side by side, with Barristan's grim presence beside them, ensuring the peace. When the arrangement was finalized, the air in the council chamber felt oppressive, as though the Seven themselves had judged them all. It was not a clean or righteous resolution, no one was truly happy. But it prevented war for the moment. The realm would remain uneasy, but blood would not drench the streets of King's Landing. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen would be wards of the crown. Renly was named heir until Stannis arrived, at which point a final decision would be made about who stood next in line. The question of the future kingship would cast a shadow over the realm, but at least it would not be decided by swords tomorrow. Tyrion escorted Jaime and Cersei back to their confinement, the guards on edge. Cersei hissed curses at Tyrion, swearing he would pay for his betrayal. Jaime merely stared at his brother with a look that was half hate, half strange respect. Tyrion said nothing, only bowed his head in weary resignation. He could not expect gratitude for tearing down the illusions they had built around themselves. Meanwhile, Ned saw to the king, who was left slumped in his chair, drained. "Ned," Robert murmured, "what have we done to ourselves? My children, my whole life is a farce. I wish I'd never left the Stormlands. I wish gods, how have we come to this?" Ned placed a firm hand on his friend's shoulder. "We do what we must, Robert. The realm will endure, and you will endure." Robert let out a bitter laugh. "Endure. I used to dream of glory, feasts, and a line of true-born sons to carry my name. Instead, I have bastards scattered in brothels and a wife who was never truly mine. Bah, I've had enough for one day." He stood, swaying slightly. "I'll find my solace in a wine cup for now. Let the realm see me as they will." Ned offered no argument. There would be many days of difficult rulings ahead, bridging the gap between the Lannisters and the throne. For now, perhaps the king needed a moment to drown himself in a flagon. In the aftermath, Tyrion and Ned met again in the library, that same dusty chamber where their unusual alliance began. This time, the sun slanted in through high windows, giving the place an almost gentle warmth. Tyrion sat at a table, flipping aimlessly through a volume on the old Valyrian freehold. Ned approached, footsteps echoing. Tyrion spoke without looking up. "We've done it, haven't we? Averted a war, at least for the moment. I'd offer a toast, but it feels a hollow victory." Ned took a seat across from him, folding his hands. "We prevented an immediate crisis. But the realm is still uneasy. The Lannisters will resent this humiliation, Tywin especially. Renly will struggle with acceptance if Stannis decides to contest it. The small folk know something is amiss, and rumors are spreading. A storm may still come." Tyrion nodded, face grim. "Likely so, but you and I have accomplished the impossible. A Stark and a Lannister working together, forging a compromise that keeps heads on shoulders. I suspect the gods themselves are laughing at the irony. A faint smile touched Ned's lips. Perhaps. I never would have believed it if you'd told me a month ago. But I'm grateful, Lannister. And you, Stark, Tyrion said, voice unexpectedly sincere. I won't pretend we'll be drinking companions for life, but you've shown that your vaunted honor need not be rigid to the point of folly. And I hope I've shown you that not all Lannisters are purely rotten. Just most of us. Ned allowed a small chuckle. Only time will tell if we can truly maintain this peace. But if we do, you and I will be able to say we chose the path of reason over bloodshed. Tyrion closed the tome with a delicate snap. You should know the next few weeks will be critical. Cersei and Jaime leaving the city under guard. The children's status, Tywin's reaction. We'll be juggling knives in the air. We will, Ned agreed. But at least we're still here to juggle. That's more than I feared we would have. They rose and exited the library together. Outside, the corridor was busy with servants rushing back and forth, their faces tight. The capital still buzzed with speculation, but it had not erupted into riots or slaughter. That, at least, was progress. As they walked, a distant horn sounded from the city gates. A messenger or a caravan, perhaps. Ned thought of the uncertain future. Would Tywin gather an army? Would Stannis sail from Dragonstone with harsh demands? Would Robert sink further into drunken despair, or emerge stronger for having faced this shame? Yet for all the dangers ahead, there was a chance, faint but real, that the Seven Kingdoms might be steered through this revelation without dissolving into bloodshed. Ned thought of his daughters, Sansa and Arya, who deserved a realm not torn apart by civil war. He thought of his wife, Catelyn, and his sons, far away in the north. He would see them again in a kingdom still intact, God's willing. And Tyrion, hobbling alongside him, said in a quiet voice, "We should be careful, my Lord Stark, that we don't become known as the greatest conspirators of our age." Ned glanced at him. "Some might call us traitors, others heroes, but I'd settle for being remembered as men who kept the realm from war." Tyrion quirked an ironic smile. In King's Landing, such men are rarely remembered at all, but it's a noble dream. They parted ways at a branching corridor, each with new tasks to handle. Ned watched Tyrion go, the dwarf's step quickening to avoid the gazes of sneering courtiers. Odd that he should feel a trace of sympathy for a Lannister, but there it was. Days passed, and slowly, painfully, the arrangement took shape. Jaime resigned from the Kingsguard and prepared for departure to Casterly Rock, under armed escort. Cersei was placed in guarded seclusion in a distant keep near the Rose Road, forced to renounce her title. Joffrey, stripped of his claim, was kept in King's Landing, nominally as a ward, though he balked at every moment and spewed venom at Sansa whenever he saw her. Myrcella and Tommen remained under watch, free to study and play, too young to grasp the enormity of their changed fortunes. The city looked on in uneasy fascination, but with no major outbreak of violence. Tywin Lannister's replies were scathing, threatening, but so far he had not marched. Perhaps some part of him recognized that open war would only ruin House Lannister's position further. Robert eventually announced that Stannis was the rightful heir if Robert himself should die. Stannis, upon receiving the letter, wrote back with stony acceptance. He neither condoned the leniency shown to the Queen nor threatened war over it, though he intimated that he would come to King's Landing soon to ensure justice. Renly fumed at that, but Ned managed to keep him calm. It was all a delicate balancing act. Through it all, Ned Stark remained Hand of the King, bearing the weight of decisions that shaped the realm. And Tyrion Lannister lingered in the Red Keep, a sort of uneasy fixture of the court now, helping to interpret his father's letters and quell the worst suspicions. They were not friends, not truly, but they were allies of necessity. That alliance proved enough to stabilize the realm for a time. One late afternoon, Ned visited the Godswood of the Red Keep, seeking a moment of quiet. The Weirwood's face watched him with sad, ancient eyes, though it was only a transplanted heart tree, not one grown in the true north. Still, Ned found solace in its presence, remembering the cold breezes of Winterfell and the solemn hush under the falling snow. He stood there a while, letting the tension ease from his shoulders. He heard soft footsteps behind him and turned to see Tyrion approach. The dwarf paused a respectful distance away. "Pardon, my Lord Stark, but I was told you might be here. I hope I'm not intruding." Ned shook his head. "No. Join me if you wish." Tyrion gazed up at the heart tree with mild curiosity. "Strange, these northern gods. No wonder you find them comforting." He cleared his throat. "I came because I wanted to tell you. Word has just arrived from Casterly Rock. My father has decided to remain where he is, for now, but he demands compensation and some guarantee that Cersei will not be harmed." Ned exhaled. "In time, perhaps Robert will relent enough to let her return to the rock. But for now, it's best she remains secluded. As for compensation, that is a matter for the crown. We'll negotiate. No doubt Baelish will have some cunning scheme." Tyrion rolled his eyes at the mention of Baelish. Then he lowered his voice. "You've done well, Stark. I doubted we could calm the realm, but we've somehow managed." Ned studied him in the dappled light under the Godswood's leaves. "It's not over, but thank you. We would never have succeeded without your help." Tyrion shrugged, avoiding Ned's eyes. "My reasons were selfish as well as altruistic. I prefer to keep my head attached to my shoulders. Still, I do believe in the value of preventing a war." Ned glanced at the heart tree, its red sap tears. "Some men are born into conflict. Others spend their lives trying to end it. I've seen enough war for one lifetime." Tyrion said nothing for a moment. Then, quietly, "You know, there will be those who say we've done a great injustice. We let the Queen commit high treason and incest, and we did not enforce the full measure of the king's justice. We allowed Jaime, the Kingslayer, to walk free. They may curse both our names." Ned nodded. "Aye, they may, but we both know the alternative was worse. Thousands of innocents would have perished in the fires of war. The small folk pay for the pride of great lords. If this was the price to prevent that, I will bear it." Tyrion tilted his head, a faint, sad smile curving his lips. "I suppose that is the difference between a good man and the rest of us. Still, I respect the choice, and I suppose I am part of it now. In the songs, we would be lauded as saviors, but in reality, we'll likely be scorned by all sides." Ned let out a soft breath. "Then let the bards pen their songs however they wish. We did what was needed." They stood in silence, the gentle rustle of leaves around them. Far off, the city rumbled with distant life, markets closing, city watch calling out. For now, the Seven Kingdoms remained at peace, thanks to an unlikely alliance between Ned Stark and Tyrion Lannister. No swords were drawn, no cities sacked. It would not solve every problem. It would not undo the bitter truths laid bare. But it might give the realm time to heal, or at least to avoid a deeper wound. Eventually, Tyrion bowed slightly. "I'll leave you to your gods, my lord. If you ever have need of my counsel or my cunning, seek me out. Until then." Ned inclined his head. "Farewell, Tyrion. And thank you." Tyrion smiled wryly and withdrew. Ned remained under the spreading branches, letting the hush envelop him. He thought of his family, prayed that someday he might return to the north and leave King's Landing behind. But until that day, he would serve as Hand of the King to the best of his ability, guided by honor and the memory of old friendships. Like Robert, once so dear to him, now battered by betrayal. And yet, there was a small hope that lingered. Perhaps, when all was said and done, they had laid a foundation for something better. The wheel of power in Westeros had been nudged in a different direction, away from immediate bloodshed. The future was uncertain, but it was not doomed to war on the morrow. In the Godswood's stillness, Ned Stark bowed his head in silent thanks to the old gods. He had joined with Tyrion Lannister and emerged with the realm still intact. Winter might be coming, as it always did, but for once, for this fleeting moment, the Seven Kingdoms rested in an uneasy calm rather than in the throes of another terrible conflict. And that, Ned thought, was as close to victory as any man could hope for in these perilous times. Ned Stark lingered beneath the heart tree, the flickering leaves casting dappled shadows over the worn stones. The quiet there was a welcome reprieve from the constant swirl of tensions beyond the Godswood's living walls. Though only a transplanted weirwood, its face carved with the solemn visage of the old gods, it offered him a sense of home, a reminder of Winterfell's ancient groves and the crisp northern air. He exhaled slowly, trying to steady the tumult that brewed in his chest. It had been a fortnight since the Queen had been stripped of her rank and Jaime Lannister had resigned from the King's Guard under the King's furious decree. Cersei was confined to a distant keep on the Rose Road, and Jaime, newly exiled, prepared for a reluctant departure westward to Casterly Rock. The realm, by all accounts, still held its breath. The city had not burned, armies had not marched, and no highborn heads had rolled, but there was an unease in the air that put Ned in mind of the hush before a storm. Ned's counsel to King Robert had kept the worst at bay, aided, remarkably, by Tyrion Lannister's efforts to placate his own house and hold off the ire of Lord Tywin. Every day, ravens flew between King's Landing and Casterly Rock, barbed letters passing from father to son, from father to king, from father to the hand. Each contained demands, protestations, threats. Yet no open war had begun. Not yet. He thought of the compromises he and Tyrion had helped forge, those days of wrangling and heated arguments with Robert, Jaime, and Cersei, each side forced to yield a measure of pride in order to keep the realm from civil war. And now that fragile arrangement lay like an unsteady scaffolding over a pit, one wrong move threatening to bring it all crashing down. Ned touched the pommel of his sword, a reflex from years of readiness. Here in the capital, subtlety mattered more than steel, and that made him uneasy. He remembered telling Robert they would handle this matter carefully, and how Robert had sneered, his voice thick with wine, "When have I ever been careful? I smash, Ned. That's what I do." Somehow, they had convinced the king that smashing head-on would only hand Tywin a pretext to ravage the realm. It was a victory, but Ned was not sure it felt like one. He heard footsteps behind him, and he turned to see Jory Castle, cousin to the loyal Ser Roderick and captain of Ned's household guard, standing with a respectful bow. Jory's face was lined with concern. "My Lord Hand," Jory said quietly, "I've just come from the courtyard. There's a party at the gates from Casterly Rock." Ned's spine tensed. "Under whose banner?" "Lannister. They say they bring a formal reply from Lord Tywin." Ned's jaw tightened. "Then I had best see to them." "Who did they send?" Jory hesitated. "A contingent of Lannister riders, perhaps a score in number. The one who leads them is Kevan Lannister." Ned recognized the name. Kevan Lannister, younger brother to Tywin, a seasoned man known for loyalty to House Lannister and a calm, pragmatic mind that contrasted with Tywin's ferocity. Kevan had never been overtly cruel, but he would not betray his house. He would be a messenger of Tywin's will, and that was enough to set Ned's nerves on edge. He sighed and turned away from the heart tree, giving it a last, reverent glance. "Very well. I'll receive them in the Great Hall. Fetch the Master of Protocol to arrange it." Jory bowed. "Yes, my lord." They departed the Godwood, stepping into the corridors of the Red Keep. Servants bustled about with hurried steps, and the occasional gold cloak patrol marched by. Ned caught glimpses of the hush that had settled over the castle, the hush of men and women who knew something grave was transpiring but did not fully understand it. A rumor had spread that the king had discovered a profound betrayal within his own family, but the details were murky at best in the minds of the small folk. Most only knew that the queen was gone, the queen's brother exiled, and the court was restless as a cat in a storm. Ned walked swiftly to the Great Hall. He had ordered it to remain in partial readiness for receiving official guests at any time, for he expected such a visit from the Lannisters sooner or later. The king, in one of his moods, might not attend until forced. Robert was likely in his solar or off in some corner of the castle, drinking in sullen solitude. For that reason, Ned had been handling the day-to-day matters as the Hand. Within minutes, the hall's attendant ushered in Kevan Lannister and his retinue. Kevan, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair, wore crimson garments trimmed with gold and a short cloak pinned with the golden lion of his house. He bowed a measured courtesy. Behind him stood a handful of sworn swords in gleaming mail and the red cloaks of House Lannister. "Lord Stark," Kevan began, "I bring cordial greetings from my brother, Lord Tywin, Lord of Casterly Rock, Shield of Lannisport, Warden of the West." His voice was calm but held a certain crispness. Ned inclined his head in the polite minimum. "Lord Kevan, you are welcome in King's Landing, provided you come in peace." Kevan's gaze flicked around the large chamber. A few knights of the King's Guard stood watch, as did some of Ned's own men. "We do. My brother wishes to see to the swift resolution of recent difficulties." The pause was weighted. Ned gestured for Kevan to continue, ignoring the dryness in his own throat. "Lord Tywin demands the immediate release of Queen Cersei into Lannister custody," Kevan said, voice carrying with it the echo of Tywin's blunt authority. He also demands the restoration of Jaime Lannister's position and titles. My brother believes the forced resignation from the Kingsguard was a humiliation inflicted upon our house, and the notion of Jaime's exile is unacceptable. Finally, he insists that my niece and nephews, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, be sent to Casterly Rock for their own security and upbringing, away from the city that has become so inhospitable. A hush fell across the hall. Ned felt anger rising in him. This was Tywin's way, turning every agreement on its head, demanding a new set of concessions. He let the silence hang, collecting his thoughts. "You know well, Lord Kevin, why none of these demands can be granted," Ned replied in a calm, firm voice. "The Queen committed high treason by deceiving the king regarding the parentage of his heirs. The realm knows Joffrey and his siblings are not true Baratheons, but rather born of incest. By law, the king can demand her life. Instead, he has confined her with some measure of mercy. As for Ser Jaime, he resigned of his own accord in a private session with the king, though it was not exactly voluntary. Regardless, it is done. He is no longer a Kingsguard knight." "That was done under duress," Kevin said. "My brother does not recognize the so-called private session as binding, not when the king was half in his cups and Ser Jaime was coerced with threats." Ned forced himself not to let annoyance show. "King Robert's signature was recorded with multiple witnesses from the small council. It is hardly a casual matter. Jaime Lannister agreed to be exiled to Casterly Rock with the understanding that by removing himself from King's Landing, he would spare himself from a more final punishment. As for the children, the king has decreed they remain wards in King's Landing. If we were to send Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen to Casterly Rock, it would appear that the crown was relinquishing them entirely to your house, which could be seen as a prelude to rebellion. We have not forgotten how swiftly armies can gather in the West." Kevin's expression tightened. "This arrangement is deeply offensive to my lord brother. House Lannister has been treated dishonorably, forced into shame." "My nephew." "Your nephew is not the king's son," Ned said, voice sharpening. "The realm was deceived. Your brother must recognize that, or we are at an impasse." For a moment, Kevin's composure cracked with frustration. Then he sighed. "Lord Stark, I have always admired your sense of justice and your care for the realm. Surely you see that humiliating the queen and disavowing her children is a matter that provokes deep anger among many houses. Some remain loyal to her. Some are angered by the secret manipulations that you and the imp have orchestrated." Ned kept his face unreadable. "I fear, Lord Kevin, that you overestimate the love the realm bears for Cersei. Most lords see the king's action as lenient, under the circumstances. That said, I am willing to hear any proposal for a final settlement that avoids open bloodshed. You've heard the king's conditions. Do you bring alternate terms from Lord Tywin that do not amount to rolling back every measure we've taken?" Kevin shifted on his feet. "My brother suggests that Jaime's exile be rescinded, and that he be allowed to serve as a sworn sword for House Lannister if not within the Kingsguard. As for Cersei, let her return to the Rock, not under the shame of being forcibly confined, but as a lady traveling under her own will, to live out her days in quiet. In exchange, Lord Tywin will not muster his forces. The West will remain peaceful, and we will not challenge the king's new line of succession, whoever that may be." Ned considered these words. It was a partial climb down from the earlier demands. Letting Jaime remain free, though not a Kingsguard, might be feasible. The realm was not well served by pushing House Lannister to the brink. It was still the mightiest of the great houses, with a formidable host. Cersei's continued presence near the capital was a poison, but shipping her off to the far west could remove her from day-to-day influence. A quiet life at Casterly Rock under Tywin's watchful eye might, ironically, keep her in check better than an outpost near King's Landing. Yet it galled Ned to let Cersei slip away without punishment beyond dethronement. He remembered Robert's red-faced ranting that she deserved the headsman's axe. On the other hand, more and more, the king had shown little appetite for further confrontation. His fury had turned into a sluggish gloom, fueled by wine. Perhaps it was best to let her vanish from the political stage. As for the children, no, Joffrey and his siblings must remain. Surrendering them would cause endless complications. "I will speak with the king," Ned told Kevin at last. "I make no promises. If Robert agrees, you may have your settlement." Kevin gave a small nod. Then I hope reason prevails, Lord Stark. My men and I will await your answer. Ned directed a steward to see to Kevin's lodging, then turned on his heel and left the great hall. His guard fell in behind him as he strode toward Robert Solar. In these days of tension, Ned seldom walked alone anywhere in the Red Keep, though he disliked the constant escort. Events moved quickly, and he could not afford a dagger in his back from any quarter. They found Robert in a wide, sunlit chamber that overlooked Blackwater Bay. The king was slouched in a padded chair, thick forearms resting on a table strewn with maps, empty wine cups, and half-gnawed joints of meat. Lord Renly was there as well, arms folded, looking troubled. They both turned at Ned's approach. "What is it now?" Robert asked, bleary-eyed. He wore a loose tunic and a belt that threatened to snap under the weight of his belly. His beard had grown unruly of late. "Kevin Lannister has arrived," Ned said. "He brings new terms from Lord Tywin." Robert snorted. "I suppose Tywin wants me to take his daughter back, bed her, and raise that bastard boy on my knee." His voice was drenched in bitterness. "Well, I won't. I'd sooner hack them all to pieces." Renly shot Ned a glance, then cleared his throat. "Lord Stark, perhaps you should enlighten the king regarding Kevin's demands." Ned recounted them succinctly. Robert listened in a sullen hush, occasionally scratching at his stubble. When Ned came to the part about letting Cersei live at Casterly Rock, the king let out a bark of mocking laughter. "So, she escapes any real punishment. Figures. That's Tywin all over. He wants to protect his brood, no matter the cost." "Yes," Ned acknowledged softly, "but it might be the best way to keep the peace." Robert's eyes flickered, as if ready to flare into anger. Instead, he sagged back. "Peace. Damn it, Ned. Can we really call this peace? I sit here like a fool while the realm whispers that the king was cuckolded by his own queen, that my children were never mine. My brothers circle like vultures. Stannis sending letters daily. Renly standing here, waiting for me to either name him heir or drop dead. And the Lannisters throw these demands in my face." He grabbed a wine cup, found it empty, and tossed it aside irritably. "But fine, fine. If letting that gold-haired harpy skulk back to the Rock will keep Tywin from marching, then let her go. I've had my fill of Lannister whores." Ned swallowed the knot in his throat. He could never grow used to Robert's crudeness. "Then you will agree to Kevin's proposal, Your Grace?" Robert reached for a jug of wine, poured a scant measure into his cup, and glared at it before drinking. "Aye, let me be rid of her. Let me be rid of them all, so I can forget this wretched business ever happened."
"Gods, why couldn't we have just fought the Targaryens again? At least that was straightforward." Neither Ned nor Renly spoke. Robert's bitterness was too deep, beyond easy comfort. He took another drink and waved a hand. "Go, Ned. Give Kevin Lannister my royal consent. Cersei can return to her father's halls, and Jaime can go with her if that's what the old lion demands. They can all rot in the west for all I care. Just keep those children in the city so the realm doesn't think I've gone soft. We keep them. The Lannisters get nothing else." Ned bowed. "As you command, Your Grace." He left with Renly on his heels. They paused outside, exchanging a glance. Renly let out a breath. "He's in a dark mood these days, darker than usual. I wonder if anything will rouse him from this stupor." Ned frowned. "His pride has been wounded in the worst way. We must hope time heals it. If not, the realm will suffer more than it already has." Renly nodded, then set off in another direction. Ned resumed his steady stride, heading back toward the tower where Kevin had been directed. Already, stewards were awaiting his order to assemble a formal audience. Soon, Kevin returned to the Great Hall, flanked by his retinue and joined by Tyrion Lannister, who'd heard of his uncle's arrival and insisted on being present. Ned, perched on the seat designated for the hand at the dais, delivered Robert's verdict. Kevin listened gravely. Tyrion's sharp eyes flicked back and forth between them, measuring every nuance. "Ser Jaime's forced resignation stands," Ned repeated, "but he is free to leave for Casterly Rock and resume whatever role your lord brother deems suitable. The king will also allow Cersei to depart from her confinement under guard. She will travel to Casterly Rock, there to remain. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen stay in King's Landing as wards of the crown. The king will not yield on that." Kevin inclined his head slowly, making no effort to hide his disappointment. I see. My brother will not be pleased, but it is better than the alternative of indefinite confinement. Very well. We accept these terms. Will the king give us his seal on a formal agreement? Ned nodded to a waiting scribe, who stepped forward with a parchment. We'll affix the royal seal. If you wish, you may add your own signature as the duly authorized representative of Lord Tywin. That way we have a record for the realm to see should they question it. Kevin took the parchment and glanced over it, his gaze lingering on the lines that spelled out Cersei's relinquishment of all titles and official standing as queen. The look on his face was pained. Tyrion stood near him, arms folded, and said nothing. He had already known the shape of these arrangements. After a moment, Kevin took a quill from the scribe and signed with the measured strokes of a man who knew the ramifications of every letter. Ned could almost feel the tension radiating from him. Perhaps Kevin was remembering the once proud queen, her children at her side, and how far they had fallen. When all was done, Kevin handed the parchment back. The matter is concluded, then. My brother will want an exact account of the conditions in which Lady Cersei is to travel. She'll be escorted by the gold cloaks as far as the border of the Westerlands, Ned said. And then your men can receive her. A show of respect and caution both. Agreed, Kevin said. And my nephew Jaime? He remains under watch until the day of departure, Ned replied. But once outside the city, he's free to ride at will, provided he heads west and away from the capital. Kevin inclined his head again, a small gesture of acceptance. That done, Ned rose, signaling that the audience was ended. Tyrion stepped up to Kevin, speaking in a low voice. Uncle, we should talk privately, Tyrion said. I'd like to know how my father truly receives these terms, and if there's any further risk of conflict once we've resolved the Queen's situation. Kevin nodded. Yes, Tyrion. Let us speak at length. We will sup together tonight. Ned watched them depart, the Lannister men trailing like a red and gold cloak behind Kevin. The crisp, formal steps of House Lannister heading toward the keep's guest quarters felt like the slow, measured toll of a bell. Perhaps this was a step closer to stabilizing the realm, though it took all of Ned's will not to recall how fragile that stability truly was. He descended from the dais and made his way through a side corridor that led to the courtyard. There, in a practice yard ringed by a tall stone wall, a handful of men trained at arms. Most were new recruits to the city watch, still adjusting to the demands of King's Landing's uncertain climate. The clang of steel on steel cut the air. It was a reminder that no matter how skillful the negotiations, it only took one heated moment, one betrayal, for swords to come into play. Outside the gate of that yard, Ned spotted Tyrion Lannister waiting alone, arms folded, as if hoping to catch him. Tyrion nodded in greeting when Ned drew closer. You have a moment, Lord Stark? The dwarf asked. Ned studied him. I do. Tyrion let out a sigh, glancing around to ensure no eavesdroppers lurked. I wanted to thank you for seeing these negotiations through. My uncle means well, but he can only do as my father instructs. You give me too much credit, Ned said. I only relayed Robert's decision. Tyrion grimaced. Still, you helped shape that decision, did you not? If you had pressed him to punish my sister more harshly, or if you had insisted Jaime remain a prisoner, the situation might have escalated. I don't doubt that father would have brought an army to the gates. Ned inclined his head. I had no desire to see war. If that means letting Jaime and Cersei live, so be it. I only pray it does not prove a grave mistake. Tyrion's lips tightened. On that, we are in agreement. My family can be volatile, but for what it's worth, I will continue to do what I can to keep the peace. The realm cannot afford a Lannister-Baratheon conflagration. Ned regarded Tyrion thoughtfully. I believe you. You've proven your willingness to stand apart from your sister's schemes. May the gods grant us the wisdom to avoid further bloodshed. Tyrion nodded, looking weary. Wise words indeed. I'll leave you to your tasks, Lord Hand. They parted ways. Ned felt an odd weight lifting from him, though only a little. Every step in the corridors reminded him that war still loomed if Tywin Lannister or Robert Baratheon lost their temper, if Stannis arrived breathing fire, if any number of other lords decided to exploit the weakness in King's Landing. The knowledge that an uneasy truce was all they had gave him no comfort. That evening, Ned met with the small council. Varys drifted in with his usual air of cunning composure, wearing long silken robes that swished around his soft slippers. Peter Baelish arrived with a sly smile, making quips about how the coin was always the first casualty of any conflict. Renly Baratheon presided, reading from a parchment about the realm's finances while Grand Maester Pycelle dozed intermittently. Ned took the seat designated for the hand and cleared his throat. "We've come to terms with Kevin Lannister," he announced. "The king has agreed to release Lady Cersei into Lannister custody and let Ser Jaime return west, on condition that no armies be raised against the crown. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen remain wards here in King's Landing. The agreement has been sealed. Implementation begins tomorrow." Baelish chuckled softly, leaning back in his chair. "You do like your carefully worded compacts, Lord Stark. Let us hope the Lannisters find no reason to break them." Varys steepled his fingers. "Such an agreement might buy us time. A wise measure, my lord. Though the people whisper, you know. Some wonder why the king does not simply punish the traitors. The rumors grow with each day that passes." Ned's mouth twitched in displeasure. "We cannot still every tongue in the city. The king's reasons are his own, and I've explained them to you all." Renly tapped his parchment. "I've asked for a modest increase in the City Watch's funding to keep the peace. When word spreads that Cersei and Jaime have gone free, some might rail against the king's decision. The presence of the gold cloaks may dissuade opportunists." Ned nodded. "Approved. We need to ensure no uprisings or attempts on the children's lives. Some may harbor ill will toward Joffrey especially. And Myrcella and Tommen must be protected, whatever their parentage, they're still wards of the crown." Baelish raised an eyebrow. "So protective, Lord Stark. One might think you wish to treat them as your own." Another rumor swirling, no doubt. Ned ignored the bait. "Anything else we must address?" Pycelle roused himself. "My lords, a message arrived from Stannis Baratheon this afternoon. He demands, in no uncertain terms, that he be acknowledged as next in line to the throne, bypassing Renly entirely." He sniffed. "He also expresses grave concern that the king has not punished the queen's treason to the fullest extent." Renly scowled. "Of course Stannis demands something. I am not surprised. My dear brother believes in absolute justice above all else." Varys's voice slipped in smoothly. "Lord Stannis is known for his rigid sense of right and wrong. He might see the king's leniency as a form of complicity. It would be wise to mollify him." Ned drummed his fingers. "Stannis remains on Dragonstone. As yet, he shows no sign of sailing on King's Landing. But we cannot ignore him. If he believes Robert has forfeited moral authority by sparing Cersei, he may attempt to rally lords who share his strict interpretation of the law." Baelish gave a short laugh. "Oh, the Onion Knight and a handful of lesser houses, I expect. But if Stannis were to vow vengeance against the Lannisters, some in the Stormlands might flock to him. Enough to cause trouble, no doubt." Ned could almost feel a headache forming. "We will draft a response. The king will reaffirm Stannis's claim as heir since Joffrey is disinherited and attempt to soothe his anger about the queen's punishment, or lack thereof. We'll explain that for the good of the realm, war was avoided. Let us pray Stannis's sense of duty to the realm outweighs his thirst for retribution." Renly bristled. "A letter may not sway him. I know my brother well. He abides by principle before anything else, even if it costs him dear. He may decide the realm needs purging of sin and false kings. If he sees Robert as compromised, he might even go so far as to claim the throne by force." Ned let out a slow breath. "One crisis at a time, my lord. Let us first see if Stannis's next letter is more conciliatory. We proceed with the release of Cersei and Jaime, hoping it satisfies Tywin. Then we address Stannis. No one to sag. Read openly, though their faces reflected varying degrees of skepticism." The meeting soon ended, leaving Ned even more exhausted than before. Such was life in King's Landing. Danger, compromise, more danger, tenuous hope, and then new threats around each corner. The next morning, the sun rose on a red keep buzzing with activity. Jaime Lannister was set to depart in midday under watch of 50 gold cloaks. Cersei would follow the next day. The entire keep felt the tension in the air. Even the scullions and maids seemed to tiptoe as if fearing to disturb the fragile balance. Ned oversaw the final details for Jaime's departure. The Kingslayer, no longer in the white cloak, dressed in dark crimson leather, a sword at his hip. He looked lean and restless, a caged lion about to be unleashed. When Ned arrived in the courtyard, Jaime was already mounted on a fine charger, flanked by Kevin and Tyrion on their own horses. 2 wagons of supplies waited, and the gold cloaks formed a line to escort them to the city gate. Jaime caught sight of Ned and smirked. "Here to wave me off, Stark? I'd never have pegged you for sentimental." Ned kept his face cold. I'm here to ensure the terms of your departure are observed. You will ride for the Westerlands, not linger among the outlying lords who might rally to you. Jaime's smirk twisted. You think I'm going to raise an army to avenge my pride? I have no illusions, Stark. My sister was shamed, my name is tarnished. If I wanted war, I'd have drawn my sword weeks ago and tried my luck at cutting down Robert on his damned throne. Ned did not doubt that Jaime had thought about it once. The realm thanks you for your restraint. Jaime snorted. Don't mistake me for a hero. I simply see no profit in dying for a lost cause. My father may feel differently, but I have my own path to walk now. Tyrion cleared his throat. Brother, a word of advice, keep that tongue leashed until you're on the road. We don't want any last-minute disasters. Ha! Always wise, little brother. Jaime's eyes flicked to Ned once more. When you see the king, tell him I hope he enjoys his hollow victory. And if he ever crosses me again. Tyrion shot Jaime a warning glare. Kevin murmured something about time to leave, urging them on. Jaime reined in the rest of whatever threat he might have made. Then he turned his mount and trotted toward the gates, the column of gold cloaks moving with him. Kevin followed, but Tyrion lingered. Tyrion looked at Ned. I won't be going with them. My father will want me to remain in King's Landing for now to keep an eye on matters. Or so I presume. Ned studied him. I wondered if you might return to the Rock with the rest of your house. A rueful half-smile. And face my father's wrath in person? No, thank you. Besides, King's Landing needs a Lannister who's less inclined to brandish a sword if we are to keep all this from unraveling. Ned nodded. Fare you well, then. Tyrion inclined his head. And you, Stark. May the next crisis come later rather than sooner. With that, Tyrion kicked his pony forward, trailing after the escort until the gates closed behind them. Ned watched from the courtyard's edge, releasing a breath as the dust settled. One step accomplished. Jaime's presence in King's Landing had been a constant threat. Sending him away might soothe some of Robert's anger. He turned to find one of his men, Desmond, standing at attention. Desmond, keep an eye on the streets. If the gold cloaks report any sign that Jaime doubles back, I want to know immediately. Yes, my lord. Ned left the courtyard, the clamor of hooves echoing off the walls in his wake. He found himself thinking of how bizarre it was that he and Tyrion had become a pair of sorts, unlikely allies who had orchestrated this entire chain of events. Eddard Stark and Tyrion Lannister working to preserve an uneasy peace. He could only hope that tomorrow, when Cersei left, it would be without incident. The next morning arrived, bright and sharp. Cersei Lannister emerged from her forced confinement like a storm cloud. She wore dark traveling clothes, her golden hair pinned beneath a hood that only partially concealed her face. The once proud queen had no retinue of loyal ladies or shining knights, only a handful of Lannister guards Kevin had left behind for her safety and a double line of gold cloaks assigned to make sure she did not deviate from the plan. In the same courtyard, Ned stood by with Barrist and Selmy, who watched with stony dignity. Robert was conspicuously absent. He had refused to witness her departure, hurling a cup across the room when asked. Ned did not blame him. There was no satisfaction in seeing Cersei stride stiffly to her horse, bitterness etched in every line of her face. She offered not a single word of farewell. Her emerald eyes flicked around, registering each guard and potential foe with a disdainful sweep until at last she mounted. She paused, scanning the watchers. Her gaze locked on Ned. For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then she leaned forward slightly in her saddle. I will not forget this, Stark, she said, her voice low and cold. Perhaps I should be grateful you spared my life. But it seems to me you have taken everything else. Enjoy your triumph, for the day may come when you answer for it. Ned kept his composure. Lady Cersei, you brought this upon yourself. If you have any sense, live out your days at Casterly Rock and let the realm forget you. That is the best outcome for everyone. Her lips curled. We shall see. My father will not abide what you've done forever. With that, she turned her horse. The gold cloaks led her out, clattering through the gate, a spare carriage behind them carrying her trunks of personal effects, whatever she possessed now that the Red Keep was no longer her domain. Ned and Barristan exchanged a look. The Kingguard Knight let out a weary breath. The realm has averted bloodshed for the moment, Barristan murmured. But I fear there is no joy in it. The king is deeply wounded and the Lannisters. He shook his head. Time will tell. Ned nodded. Time, indeed. They parted ways, each heading to their duties. Ned paused to gaze once more at the empty gate. So that was that. King's Landing was free of Cersei and Jaime Lannister. The so-called Lion's Den had dispersed, at least those two. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen remained. But they were children.
However twisted Joffrey's nature might be, Robert and the realm were in control now, not the queen. Days turned to a week. The city slowly accepted that Cersei was gone, as was Jaime. Rumors multiplied like flies on carrion. Some said Cersei had been banished for witchcraft, others that she had tried to poison the king and was exiled to avoid scandal, still others that the king had discovered her adultery with half the court. In the end, the small folk believed what they pleased, but they knew this much. The queen was no longer queen, and the royal children were being watched carefully by the king and his hand. Joffrey sulked around the keep with a perpetual sneer, escorted by gold cloaks wherever he went. He glared at Sansa Stark when he saw her, no doubt recalling the days when he'd called her his betrothed, an arrangement that was now void. Sansa tried to avoid him, though it pained her to see the boy she once believed a romantic prince turned into a bitter, scorned whelp. Arya watched him from a distance with narrowed eyes, wanting to humiliate him with some snide remark or well-placed blow, but Ned forbade her to provoke trouble. Myrcella and Tommen were too young to truly understand the scope of what had happened. They missed their mother, that was clear, but they were also gentle children who spent much of their time with Septa tutors or playing with Arya, who showed them a side of childhood they'd rarely experienced. Muddy runs through the courtyard, chasing cats or sneaking lemon cakes from the kitchens. Ned watched them sometimes and felt a pang of pity. The sins of the parents should not stain the children. He had insisted they be treated kindly, with respect and decency, and so far that order was obeyed. Meanwhile, the king's mood seesawed between grim acceptance and fits of anger. Most nights found him in his solar or bedchamber, wine-soaked and cursing the memory of Cersei. Renly tried to engage him in matters of state, but Robert waved him off. So the governance of the realm landed increasingly in Ned's lap. He dealt with petitions, oversaw the city watch, and navigated the thorny politics that came from newly unsettled alliances. Late one evening, Ned pored over a sheaf of letters in his chamber, the candle guttering low. He rubbed his temples, reading yet another complaint from some minor lord about a boundary dispute near the Blackwater Rush. The door creaked, and a steward entered, bowing. "My Lord Hand," the man said softly.
"There is a messenger here." He arrived by ship from Dragonstone, bearing a letter from Lord Stannis Baratheon himself, addressed to you and the king. Ned sat up. "Stannis. Very well, bring him in." Moments later, a lean man with salt-stained clothing and a close-cropped beard strode in. He bowed awkwardly. "My Lord Hand, I bring greetings from Lord Stannis. He bade me deliver the sealed letter into your hand." Ned accepted the parchment. Its seal was black wax impressed with the fiery heart sigil that Stannis had adopted since allying himself with the Red Priestess from Aes High. That matter alone made Ned uneasy, Stannis dabbling in foreign gods and flames. Still, he was Robert's brother, the rightful heir. He broke the seal, unrolled the parchment, and began to read in silence. The letter was written in Stannis's rigid, no-nonsense style. To Eddard Stark, Hand of the King. I have heard the rumors of your resolution with the Lannister treachery. My brother Robert spares the incestuous brood, confining them only to exile while the realm's laws cry out for justice. I cannot condone such leniency. Nevertheless, I am not blind to the cost of war. Let this letter serve as notice. I shall visit King's Landing within the month to speak plainly with my brother and the small council. I will determine if the realm's governance remains righteous. If I find it lacking, I will act as I must. In the matter of the succession, it is my right by law to be named heir, and I demand that the king affirm this publicly and in writing for all the great houses to see. If Robert refuses, we will have much to discuss. If he grants this rightful request, then we may speak further of the realm's stability and the role I might play to ensure it. Stannis Baratheon, Lord of Dragonstone. Ned read it through twice, frowning. Then he looked at the messenger. Very well. Tell your lord that we have received his letter and will prepare for his visit. The messenger bowed. Thank you, my Lord Hand. I have done my duty. With your leave, I will find a bunk for the night. Ned nodded and gestured for the steward to show the man out. Once alone, he turned the letter over in his hands. The news was unsettling but not unexpected. Stannis was looming like a dark shadow across the water, ever the righteous zealot. Ned wondered how Robert would react, likely with anger or maybe with more sullen acceptance. He sighed and decided to bring the letter to the king immediately. Rising from the desk, he summoned two of his guard to accompany him across the castle. At this hour, Robert was likely in his bedchamber or possibly the smaller solar with a cask of wine. The torches along the corridors sputtered as they passed, and from below came the noises of the city watch changing shifts, the faint clang of distant gates. They found Robert in his solar, which stank of stale sweat and spilled ale. The king was half asleep in a chair, an empty flagon on the table, his doublet unbuttoned. A single torch burned, flickering gloom across the walls. Ned approached carefully. "Robert," he said quietly, "Stannis has sent a letter." The king cracked an eye open. "Stannis? Huh." He rolled his neck, trying to straighten. "Let me guess, he's angry. He wants me to kill all the Lannisters or else name him heir. Or perhaps both." "Something like that," Ned admitted. "He's coming to King's Landing soon, within the month. He wants a formal acknowledgement of his status as heir. He also disapproves of our leniency towards Cersei and Jaime." Robert scowled, though the effect was dulled by his drunken languor. "Stannis is always scowling about something. Fine. Let him come. If he thinks to bark demands in my face, I'll bark right back. But yes, I suppose it's time I named him heir. Joffrey is no son of mine." Ned tried to hide his relief. "It would go a long way toward quelling some of the realm's doubts if you publicly proclaim Stannis as next in line." I'll do it tomorrow," Robert grumbled. "Then maybe he'll stop glaring at me from across the sea. That said, I don't want him stirring up trouble about the Lannisters. We've hammered out a deal, I won't have him overturning it. If he tries, He trailed off, searching for the right threat. "I'll remind him who's king." Ned decided not to press the matter further. "Very good, Your Grace. I'll see to the arrangements for his arrival. We can host a formal welcome if that pleases you." Robert gave a dismissive wave. Yes. Whatever you like, Ned. Just keep the peace. I'm too tired for more." He slumped back in his seat, eyes drooping. Ned bowed and departed, instructing a pair of servants waiting outside to keep watch. If the king choked on his own vomit, Ned thought bitterly, who would lead the realm then? It was a grim reflection, but all too real. At least Robert had given a half-promise to settle the question of succession. The next day, as the sun climbed above the rooftops, Ned convened a brief session of the small council. Robert, bleary-eyed but sober enough, declared before them that he recognized his brother Stannis as heir to the Iron Throne. Renly was present, his face wooden. Varys merely arched his brows. Pycelle murmured something about the natural order. Baelish was quiet, a slight twitch to his lips that might have been amusement or annoyance. Ned had scribes record the king's words, making certain the formal declaration would be sent by Raven throughout the Seven Kingdoms. Let no one doubt that Robert was naming Stannis, not Joffrey, to follow him if he died. That alone might quell some confusion. But Ned still fretted over Renly's reaction. Renly did not storm out, nor did he protest, but Ned could see the tension in the youngest Baratheon's posture. Renly likely believed he would be a more popular king than Stannis, but the law was not on Renly's side. So he held his tongue. In the following weeks, the city settled into a new pattern. Tywin Lannister did not march, at least not openly. Word filtered in that Jaime had arrived safely at Casterly Rock, and Cersei too, escorted by her father's men once beyond the border. Tyrion remained in King's Landing, elusive but watchful, occasionally dropping by the small council to offer a sardonic remark. Myrcella and Tommen studied their lessons under the king's tutors, while Joffrey lurked around, sometimes haunting the training yard but rarely speaking to anyone. He clung to whatever scraps of pride he could. Some nights, the guards found him pacing the corridors alone, a sour look on his face. Sansa reported that he'd once said to her, "I should be king," but she had no appetite for the argument and fled his presence. At last, the time came for Stannis Baratheon to arrive. Ravens from Dragonstone indicated he would sail into Blackwater Bay on a specific day, bringing a small retinue of knights and lords who supported him. Ned ensured the city was prepared, the gold cloaks would line the streets near the docks, and a modest welcoming party would greet him. Robert insisted he would not greet Stannis personally on the quay. He was too proud or too resentful of Stannis's moralizing. So Ned and Renly took on the duty. The day dawned gray with a stiff breeze coming in off the sea. The harbor was choppy, gulls wheeling overhead. Ned stood on the dock, wearing his formal attire as hand, while Renly waited in a fine green and gold doublet. A line of gold cloaks kept the curious small folk at bay, though a crowd had gathered to see what new drama might unfold. They watched as a galley bearing the stag banner glided into view, oars pulling in rhythm. Though the colors matched House Baratheon, the device on the sail was slightly different. Within the crowned stag was a fiery heart, that new sigil rumor to be the influence of the Red Woman who guided Stannis. Ned had heard unsettling tales of how Stannis allowed her to burn the statues of the Seven on Dragonstone, claiming she served a foreign god of light and shadow. The ship docked. Gangplanks were laid down and a column of men disembarked, many wearing the sigil of Dragonstone. Leading them was Stannis himself, tall, balding, with a stiff posture and a grim set to his mouth. He wore a coat of plate, silver on black, etched with the flaming heart. At his side walked a slender figure in red robes, a woman with coppery hair. Ned guessed this must be Melisandre of Aes High, the Red Priestess. Renly's expression tightened momentarily at the sight of her, but he stepped forward with a polite smile. "Brother," he said, forcing warmth into his voice, "welcome to King's Landing." Stannis barely inclined his head. "Renly, Lord Stark." He looked at Ned. "It's been some time since we spoke." Ned bowed respectfully. "Lord Stannis, you are welcome. The king awaits you in the Red Keep." Stannis's eyes flickered, cold and assessing. "Yes. I trust the matter of my rightful place as heir has been settled." Ned maintained a neutral tone. "The king declared it so. Announcements have been sent throughout the realm." Stannis nodded curtly. "Good. I'll hear it from his own lips." He motioned to the men behind him, who began to unload a few trunks. "In the meantime, we shall lodge in the keep, I assume?" Renly spread his hands. "Rooms have been prepared." He eyed Melisandre for a moment. "We also have accommodations for your priestess." Melisandre inclined her head, a mysterious smile tugging at her lips. Her red robes swirled in the breeze, giving an almost otherworldly look to her presence. "Your courtesy is noted, Lord Renly. The Lord of Light sees all kindnesses." Renly said nothing, but Ned sensed the tension. He gestured for the party to follow. The gold cloaks flanked them on either side as they left the docks, winding through the streets. Small folk peeked from windows and doorways, whispering rumors. "That's Stannis Baratheon? Looks a grim one. Gods, who's the Red Witch with him?" Baratheons always bring trouble. Within the Red Keep, Ned led them to the great hall where Robert sat upon the Iron Throne. The king looked more sober and well-groomed than usual, as if he'd forced himself to appear regal for this confrontation. Lords of the court lined the walls, curious to witness the brothers' meeting. Stannis strode forward, halting a short distance from the throne. He bowed stiffly, and behind him his retinue did likewise, though Melisandre merely inclined her head. Robert observed them with a heavy-lidded gaze. "Brother," Robert said in a carrying voice. "You've come to collect your due, I'm told." Stannis's jaw tightened. "I've come to ensure the realm is ruled justly and lawfully, Robert. Starting with the matter of succession. I have heard you declared me heir, but I wish to hear it confirmed before these lords." Robert grimaced but spoke clear. "ROI. I, Robert of House Baratheon, King of the Undulls and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, do here affirm Stannis Baratheon, my brother, as my lawful heir and rightful successor should I die or otherwise become unfit to rule." A wave of murmurs passed through the gathered courtiers. Stannis's face remained a mask, but satisfaction flickered in his eyes. He bowed again. "Then the record is clear." Robert exhaled. "It is. Now speak, Stannis. You made your concerns about the Lannisters plain in your letters. The crown has reached an arrangement to prevent war. Are you here to dispute it?" Stannis straightened. "I find it lenient in the extreme, Robert. By every tradition of our laws, incest is an abomination and treason is punishable by death. Cersei Lannister lied to you regarding her children's parentage. That is high treason. Yet you let her go." A hush fell. Robert's knuckles went white on the throne's arms. "I did. We had reason to do so. The realm needed peace more than we needed Lannister blood to spill." Stannis's thin lips pressed together. "So you say. Yet there must be punishment for wrongdoing, or the law loses its meaning. The Red Priests teach that lawless light burns away shadow, revealing truth." He gestured slightly, and Melisandre stepped forward. She spoke in a soft, resonant tone that seemed to carry, "Yes, your grace. In the light of the one true God, falsehoods cannot stand. Justice must be done. If not by mortal kings, then by the flames of the divine." A ripple of unease went through the hall. Some lords shifted, crossing themselves or mouthing prayers to the Seven. The woman's presence was unnerving, her eyes seeming to shine with an inner fire. Robert scowled. "You bring your foreign gods here, woman," he growled. "I'll not have you speak to me of justice. I am the king." Melisandre offered a cat-like smile. "The king sits upon his throne as a mortal figure. The Lord of Light's justice is eternal." Stannis lifted a hand, signaling her to silence. "Regardless of the spiritual matter, brother, the question remains, the Lannisters committed grave crimes. Will you allow them to go unpunished, their children remaining in your city as if nothing has happened? Joffrey is an insult to your name. Why let him draw breath at all?" Ned, standing at the side of the dais, stepped forward cautiously. Lord Stannis, the children are wards. They are not recognized as Baratheon heirs. Their mother has been exiled. Ser Jaime is no longer in the King's Guard. The realm's laws have, in effect, stripped them of any claim. If we had executed them, House Lannister would have likely marched, igniting another war that would bring death to thousands. Stannis glanced at Ned, voice cold. Is that the North's sense of justice, Stark? Let criminals go free so we might spare ourselves a costly war. Ned felt heat rise in his cheeks but kept his tone level. This was the king's choice. I advised him, yes, because I believe the realm cannot endure another war. Is that not part of justice, to spare the innocent from the horrors of conflict? Stannis's gaze flicked to Robert. You have my allegiance, brother, for you have named me heir. But I warn you, any sign of further treachery from the Lannisters, any attempt by that old fox Tywin to seize power, and I will call for a reckoning. Your arrangement or no? Robert let out a humorless laugh. Fine. Then if Tywin Lannister marches, you'll be the first to help me put him down, yes. Stannis nodded stiffly. I will. For the sake of the realm. But I'll not stand for more coddling of criminals. Silence stretched. The tension in the hall was palpable, as if the courtiers expected Robert to lash out or Stannis to storm away. But Robert merely exhaled, slumping a bit on the throne. So be it. Now come, brother, you've had a long journey. Let us drink, or feast, or do something other than posture in front of half the court. Stannis's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I'll sup with you, though I trust you have more than wine to offer. My men hunger for real food. Robert stood slowly, his bulk shifting the swords of the Iron Throne. We have plenty. Let the feast be readied. The courtiers began to disperse, some chattering excitedly about the spectacle they'd just witnessed. Ned caught Stannis casting him a hard look as if to say, we will speak more on this. Then Stannis turned to Renly, offering a brief word of greeting, though the tension between them was clear too. Melisandre stood like a crimson shadow at Stannis's side, her expression quietly triumphant, as if she had succeeded in some unspoken mission by bringing Stannis here to confront the king. In the hours that followed, the Red Keep bustled with preparations for the feast. King Robert might be in a sour mood most of the time, but he still understood the importance of show. Platters of roasted meats, pies, and sweet wines were laid out in the great hall. Musicians tuned their instruments. Stannis's men found lodging in the keep, stable hands took their horses, and the tension that hung around them was swallowed by the forced merriment of a royal feast. Ned attended, of course, sitting near the king and Stannis at the high table. The mood was subdued for a feast. Robert drank, but not to the point of bellowing. Stannis sipped wine sparingly. Renly tried to liven things with a few jokes, but got only mild chuckles. Tyrion Lannister appeared, making conversation with the lords around him, seemingly at ease, though Ned wondered what he truly thought of Stannis's arrival. No doubt Tyrion was measuring potential threats. As the courses progressed, Ned took the chance to speak quietly with Stannis. My lord, I trust you'll remain in King's Landing for a time? Stannis nodded curtly. A few weeks, perhaps longer. We'll see. My maesters have advised me to discuss the shipping lanes around Dragonstone with the master of ships. I also intend to examine the royal fleet's condition. As heir, it's my right to ensure it's maintained properly. Ned recognized that as a subtle critique of Robert's leadership. Indeed. Ser Davos is with you, I hope. Davos Seaworth, the so-called Onion Knight, was known to be Stannis's most loyal man and one of the more sensible among them. Yes, Davos is here. He's lodging with my knights. Stannis's voice was marginally warmer when he spoke of Davos. He will be a voice of reason. Perhaps you and he can speak. He respects you, Lord Stark. Ned inclined his head. I would value that. Across the table, Robert burped and demanded more ale. Renly, seeing an opportunity, tried once again to conjure cheer. Brother, do you remember the time at Storm's End when you dared me to ride a horse bareback through the courtyard at dawn? He laughed. I nearly broke my neck. Robert grunted, blinking blearily. I remember. Good times? His voice held no real mirth. Stannis watched them with an impassive face, then murmured, I recall that you forced me to chase the horse down afterward. I was furious. Renly shrugged in good humor. You always were. The music swelled, some lords began dancing with ladies, but the high table remained subdued. Melisandre ate little, sipping from a golden cup, her red hair glowing in the torchlight. Ned found her presence unnerving, though she carried herself with dignity. He noticed she occasionally glanced at Robert with an unreadable expression, perhaps scorn, or pity, or simply curiosity at the king who defied her god. At length, the feast ended, lords drifting off to speak in corners or retire to their chambers. Ned excused himself, satisfied that the day's events had not led to new disaster. Stannis might bristle at the Lannisters' lenient treatment, but he was outnumbered in King's Landing, and Robert had no appetite for further bloodshed. The realm continued to totter along the edge of crisis, but it had yet to fall. In the subsequent days, Stannis busied himself with naval matters, traveling to the royal fleet's harbor with Ser Davos and other knights. He demanded inventories, questioned officers, and generally asserted the authority he believed was due to the heir. Robert didn't object, caring little for the day-to-day. Ned oversaw the process, ensuring no fights broke out between Stannis's men and the locals. Tyrion lurked in the background, occasionally exchanging polite greetings with Stannis but rarely engaged in lengthy conversation. Meanwhile, letters arrived from across the realm, each responding to the news that Joffrey was disinherited and the queen exiled. Some houses expressed relief, others confusion, and a few questioned whether the king was truly in control or if the Hand was ruling in his stead. Ned spent hours drafting replies, trying to soothe lords from the Reach, the Riverlands, the Vale, and beyond. The North, for its part, was relatively quiet, trusting Ned's guidance. Though Catelyn wrote that many in Winterfell worried about him. One afternoon, Ned was in the Solar with a spread of letters, conferring with Baelish and Varys, when Tyrion Lannister entered. Baelish arched an eyebrow. "Ah, the imp! Come to join our little council? Or simply to amuse us with your wit?" Tyrion ignored the jibe. "Lord Stark, I have heard from my father. He sends a raven nearly every other day. But today's letter is interesting." He held up a parchment. "He demands the king call a great council to address the matter of succession and lineages. He claims such a council is necessary to reaffirm the stability of the throne." Ned's brow furrowed. "We already know the line of succession. Robert, then Stannis." Tyrion shrugged. "That is not in dispute, presumably. But my father may be seeking to have the realm's great lords formally weigh in, perhaps to quiet any dissent from those who might still support Joffrey or question the new arrangement. Or maybe he has some scheme of his own. My father rarely moves without cause." Varys's soft voice intruded. "A great council would gather lords from every corner. It would be a stage for every discontent to speak. Potentially dangerous if old grudges or ambitions rise up." Baelish stroked his neat beard. "But it might also settle matters in an official capacity. If all the lords gather and endorse Stannis as heir, that leaves no question. And it might calm some who fear the Lannisters are about to wage war. Tywin might use it to show that House Lannister stands behind the king, provided certain concessions are made." Ned tapped his fingers on the table. "It is not a terrible idea in principle. But do we trust Tywin to keep the peace at such an assembly? If he rode to King's Landing with 1,000 knights, who knows what might happen?" Tyrion gave a mirthless smile. "A fair concern. Still, it's what he's proposed. Perhaps you could respond with conditions. If he comes, let him bring only a small retinue, or hold the council in some neutral location." Varys spread his hands. "Neutral, my lord? Where would that be? Harrenhal? That accursed fortress hardly seems the symbol of unity we'd want. Riverrun? The Tullis might be biased. The Vale is remote. The Stormlands might amuse Robert. But who else?" He shrugged. "King's Landing is the center of power." Ned sighed. "And Tywin surely knows that. He probably wants the council here, where he can approach with enough men to ensure his own safety and show his strength." Baelish smirked. "That is how the game is played." Tyrion tucked the letter away. "I will write to him and suggest that the king is open to the notion, but must consult the small council first. I'll imply it may take time. That might keep him from making any rash moves." Ned nodded. "Yes, delay the matter for now. We've enough on our plate with Stannis here. Let's not summon all the realm's lords until we're certain we can keep them from each other's throats." With that decided, they returned to the day's tasks. That was ever the pattern of Ned's life now, quieting one crisis, anticipating the next. The city was calmer, but there remained an undercurrent of fear that Tywin might turn restless, that Stannis might press for more punishment of the Lannisters, that Robert might spiral further into drunken torpor. Days passed. Stannis lingered, meeting with Robert from time to time, each encounter tense. Melisandre roamed the castle with a faint smile, as though curious. She caused quite a stir, for the servants swore they saw her walking alone at odd hours, the torchlight gleaming on her red hair as if guided by an inner flame. Whispers abounded of the Red Witch, some calling her demon-touched, others enthralled by her exotic presence. One evening, as Ned finished a late meeting, he saw Stannis and Melisandre by the castle ramparts overlooking Blackwater Bay. The sky was bruised with twilight, a single orange moon rising. Ned hesitated, then approached quietly, ensuring not to startle them. Stannis turned when he heard footsteps. Melisandre gazed out over the water, her expression unreadable in the dim light. "Lord Stark," Stannis greeted, not unkindly. "My lord," Ned said. "I was walking. Are you enjoying the view?" Stannis grunted. "It's not my purpose to enjoy. I merely watch. This city is too full of whispers and shadows. On Dragonstone I can see the horizon clearly." Ned inclined his head. "I understand. The Red Keep is a nest of secrets." Melisandre turned then, her voice a soft hum. "Shadows are not always evil, my lord Hand. They can hide great truths from those not ready to see." Her eyes seemed to reflect the moonlight. Ned regarded her warily. "I prefer honesty in the light of day." "Indeed," she said with a half-smile. "Yet the greatest illusions can also appear in daylight. The Lord of Light reveals all in time, even the lies of a queen." Stannis's face hardened. That queen, by all rights, should have burned for her sins. Ned stood firm. "You'd have the entire Lannister line pay in blood?" Stannis shook his head. "Not all. But Cersei and Jaime, yes. Joffrey as well, perhaps. To let them live is to invite further decay. Robert sees it differently, for the sake of peace. You do too." Ned thought of the devastation a war would unleash, the innocent small folk who would suffer. "Yes, we do." Melisandre's voice murmured like a distant flame. "Peace is good, so long as it does not become a veil over injustice. Lawless light purges the unclean. But you have chosen the path of compromise. Let us hope it does not lead to a greater darkness." Ned felt a chill. "What darkness do you foresee, my lady?" She studied him, then turned her gaze back to the bay. "There are many shadows. Some across the sea, some in the cold north. When the night is darkest, a great war shall come, and only the true champion of the Lord of Light can stand against it. If your illusions remain, if your realm is divided, you will be swept away." He suppressed a shiver, unsettled by her cryptic prophecy. It reminded him of old tales Maester Luwin had once dismissed, of White Walkers and the Long Night. But those were legends from thousands of years ago, nothing that belonged in the present. Still, her manner made him uneasy. Stannis cleared his throat. "Melisandre sees far, sometimes more than I care to, but let us return to the keep. I tire of standing in the wind, and I suppose we've said enough for one night." They parted ways. Ned walked alone to his chambers, reflecting on how the city's knots of intrigue seemed overshadowed by the woman's ominous hints of distant calamities. Perhaps it was just talk, some foreign religion's myth. But the look in her eyes had unsettled him deeply, more than he cared to admit. Not long after, on a bright morning, word arrived that a man named Beric Dondarrion had come to the capital, seeking the king's justice against outlaws in the Riverlands. The small council met to discuss the matter. Ned recognized Beric from previous tournaments, a gallant young lord with a sense of honor. He had come bearing tales of brigands along the Trident, men rumored to be remnants of House Targaryen loyalists or simple cutthroats. Baelish teased that it was hardly the realm's greatest concern, but Ned insisted they hear him out. The king, however, had no patience for it, so Ned once again took up the tasks Robert could not be bothered with. While such local troubles seemed minor compared to the conspiracies swirling around the throne, Ned felt it essential not to neglect them. A realm is not held together solely by the big alliances, he often reminded himself, but by the countless smaller threads of law and order. If bandits roamed the roads unchecked, if petty lords defied the king's peace, it was all part of the slow unraveling. So he met with Beric and arranged for the young lord to lead a royal sanction to quell the worst of the outlaws, a modest force of men under the crown's banner. Stannis, hearing of it, snorted in disdain that Robert spares 100 men to chase brigands but can't bring himself to punish treason. But Ned let the remark pass. At least the realm was doing something for the small folk. Meanwhile, Tyrion sent polite messages back and forth with Tywin, deferring the question of a great council. Kevin had returned west, presumably to manage Cersei's transition to life at Casterly Rock.
No sign of Lannister aggression surfaced. If anything, the West grew quieter, as if preparing for something, or perhaps waiting to see if the king's decision held. The Iron Bank of Bravos, noticing the realm's unrest, began pressing for payment of certain debts, which Peter Baelish danced around with his usual manipulations, borrowing from one source to pay another. Through it all, Ned and Tyrion's strange collaboration persisted. They met weekly, sometimes alone, to compare notes on possible threats. Tyrion gleaned rumors from the lower city, from brothels and wine sinks. Ned gleaned them from the courts of lords petitioning the hand. They shared them quietly, each trusting the other just enough to keep the city from sliding into chaos. They did not pretend friendship. Ned still felt uneasy around a Lannister, and Tyrion still found Ned's brand of honor baffling, but they respected the results of their alliance. At times, Tyrion would bring glimpses of humor to Ned's day. Once they crossed paths in a corridor where Tyrion had just come from the king's solar, shaking his head. He's well in his cups, raving about a plan to host the largest tournament in history, if only to prove to the realm that he's still Robert Baratheon, the demon of the Trident. Ned sighed. God spare us. Another expensive folly. Tyrion shrugged. It might amuse the small folk at least until they realize their taxes fund it. But that's the king's prerogative. Ned rubbed his temples. I'll speak to him. We can't afford a grand tourney now. Not with the realm uncertain and the coffers half empty. Tyrion nodded. If you need help making him see reason, call on me. I can be very persuasive when coin is involved. After all, who better than a Lannister to count the cost? Ned almost smiled. Fair enough. They parted ways, each immersed in responsibilities. Ned found that his days stretched long into the night, always a letter to draft, a petition to weigh, a rumor to track. Sleep came late and lightly, haunted by thoughts of the realm's precarious stability or by half-remembered dreams of Winterfell's quiet snows. In the darkest hours, he sometimes wondered if, in sparing the Lannisters and forging this alliance, he had done the realm a disservice, postponing war rather than preventing it. But he reminded himself of the bodies that would have piled in the streets had conflict broken out. For all the realm's flaw,